went in.
Did you see anything out on the freeway? We've seen some shots of the Sherwood Park Freeway, and cars, they're just torn up. They look like tin cans.
Yeah, there was still some traffic going through it. It was silly for them to do that, but yeah, it looked like they were still going through. We could see some poles being broken. Looked like an electrical box blew up, big flash, and you could see lots of debris. It must have collected something because it had trash in it circulating around.
Did you pick up on anything else out there?
It looked like the refiners were taking some kind of emergency measures, maybe to shut down as they saw the storm coming in.
And you've never seen anything like this. Most people are saying that they've never seen a storm hit Edmonton like this.
I never have, that's for sure, in Western Canada anyway.
Well, thanks for coming in.
Okay, thank you.
Dana Lewis has joined us tonight, and Dana was out in the middle of all this afternoon. Tell me a little bit about what you saw. You were out on the Sherwood Park Freeway.
We were just moments away from where the funnel cloud had actually touched down, just minutes behind it, and at that point, as we were driving along in the van with a cameraman, the wind was incredible. You couldn't see more than several feet in front of it. Large hail the size of baseballs was coming down. We thought the front windshield of the vehicle was going to shatter a number of times. Now, as we approached the Sherwood Park Freeway, where a lot of the damage was, where the main part of the twister seemed to have touched down this afternoon, traffic was backed up for miles. We had to go eastbound in the westbound lanes in order to get to the main area affected. What we saw when we arrived is I counted at least 20 to 30 vehicles that had been flipped over on their sides. Some of them burned out. At that point, we were there before many of the emergency vehicles had even arrived on the scene. People were scattering about, trying to get people and free them from vehicles. The emergency crews were having such a difficult time getting to the scene that many people were trapped for a long time. As I say, vehicles were burned out. I saw several people pulled out, taken by a stretcher into the various ambulances, and they were attempting to get them out of there as quickly as possible. The vehicles that were on the road that had flipped over on their roofs, we just thought that they had been driving up the freeway and got caught in this. We learned later that, in fact, many of them had been in a factory area off to the west side of the Sherwood Park Freeway, had been picked up and hurled hundreds of yards and landed on the freeway, many of them, and they were never there to begin with. The factory area itself is a mess. There are many, many people, and I guess that this is the main problem today, is the timing of this tornado when it touched down. There are so many people that were still at work. It hit between 3 and 3:30 this afternoon. There were literally hundreds of people in those factories. And at this point, Joanne, that is the main problem for emergency crews. They've cleared people out of the vehicles along the highway. The big problem is that there are so many people still in those factories buried. Well, I should say that the factories have collapsed, and the fear is that there could be many people buried beneath the rubble in there. And that's what rescue crews have got to do. Again, they have a problem with manpower. They've called in the Army. They're attempting to get them down into that area so that they can begin to go through that debris. There's a lot of brick, a lot of twisted metal. They've got to go through that and see if there are more people trapped in that area.
Nobody knows when something like this starts, of course, just how bad it's going to get. And when you were heading out, you've been in other tornadoes. Did this remind you of something that happened before?
I covered the tornado in Ontario in Woodstock in about 1980, I believe it was. The other main tornado was in Barrie, Ontario. And this one, I would have to say, is in many ways worse than that, particularly because of the time of day. That factory area reminded me of Barrie, the north end of Barrie, where so many factories and residential houses had been torn apart. This is the same kind of factory complex area. There isn't the residential housing in that area, but again, many of those buildings are just leveled. You know, when you talk to people that were freed from there, you have to just wonder as to how lucky many of them are, that many of them were standing in the building. They say that they heard the sound almost like a freight train approaching. At that point, many of them had the whereabouts to go in, to get in the center of the building, try and take shelter, and the buildings came down around them. It's just so lucky that many more people weren't hurt.
Okay, Dana, thanks very much.
Thank you.
The Edmonton Fire Department is asking all off-duty staff to please report to their base stations. As Dana just mentioned, they're calling in the Army and as many people as they can possibly get to come in and help the city. So the fire department again is asking all off-duty staff, please report to your base stations. As well, University Hospital has just issued this advisory. They want available nurses to call in. You're not to go into the hospital unless you are requested, so please do call in first. And we have confirmed reports that 3 people are dead as a result of this tornado. The Royal Alexandra Hospital has put emergency plans into place as a result, and all hospital staff at the Royal Alex have been asked to please return because casualties, as you know, are just pouring in there. We are going to keep you up to date. We'll be back right after these messages.
The pyramids.
Were you home when it happened?
No, I was at work. I'm just getting home.
Ronnie found Cody out here wherever his service.
Is that right?
I guess so. She said that Ronnie started screaming and freaking out, and he started yelling to Cody, and he seen 2 feet sticking out, and he cleared a bunch of stuff, and he pulled them out. This used to be my living room. This is what's left of my living room.
Okay, I just wanted to tell you that that was in the Clairview area, and that's what the high winds did. That wasn't necessarily hit by a twister, but the high winds did that in the Clairview area, and those are the residents managing to arrive back home in the lull of the storm to pick through the debris of their now devastated homes. Bob, what are the emergency numbers? I understand you have them there.
The Emergency Relief Service has set up a warehouse to receive and distribute supplies to people hit by the storm. It's located at this address, 10820 119th Street. That's 108th Avenue and 119th Street. That's a place where you can get supplies if you've been hit hard by the storm. And here is the phone number, 453. Let's not confuse you here. I'll give you that number later. This is the Central Emergency phone number, 423-4554. That's the emergency line in Edmonton if you're in trouble, 423-4554. The Red Cross Emergency Shelter, should you need it this evening. That number was also supered there. Now, the number I was giving you was the warehouse. And if you have blankets that you can donate, this is the time to start packing them together, not delivering them until the storm is through. The phone number to call for that warehouse, that clearinghouse, is 453-1396. 453-1396. That's an emergency relief service setting up a warehouse to help the victims.
Okay, and as we prepare to go to commercial, we'll just remind you, please do not leave your homes, do not drive tonight, and stay home and stay tuned. We'll be right back with more information.
And this particular report is telling us the trees are snapping like toothpicks because of the strong winds. As you can appreciate, there's a lot of information coming in at this moment. We'd like to recap very briefly what happened this afternoon, that in fact the tornado began in the southeast section of our city, moving through the green belt between Edmonton and Sherwood Park before moving north. Millions of dollars worth of damage has been done. We have pictures of what it looked like earlier this afternoon on the south side. This was taken by Kelly McClugan, who went out to see obviously what was going on in that area.
Edmonton just after 3 o'clock this afternoon. Within minutes, the reports are pouring in. Tornadoes. The first touches down in Mill Woods on Edmonton's south side. It stretches for blocks, sweeping northward along 50th Street. The tornado touches down again, flattening an industrial park.
Well, we saw the tornado coming in from the south, saw the power line shaking. We were watching from the shop, and from the doors of the shop, we heard a sound. It was just like a freight train. And I had everybody move right to the center of the building. There's a concrete block portion in the center of it, and we moved everybody into that area and into the center portion of the office and went right through. And I was sitting there, and then all of a sudden I could see daylight, and the whole roof, just everything disappeared.
Next, the tornado hit the Sherwood Park Freeway, where rush hour had come early, thanks to the upcoming long weekend.
Well, I just went through it. I drove through the tornado, that's all, and it didn't flip my car. I made it through, and then I seen people all over the place dead, and bodies and houses torn, and just...
To go through each one of these buildings and trying to move this steel, this concrete.
Exactly, and Now that we've moved the people that were severely injured, it's to get back in there and find out, and it could be a long, drawn-out process, but we are in the midst of organizing to get those people out.
And the rescue officials aren't alone. On the southeast edge of the city, where the tornado first hit, residents stand surrounded by devastation. One of those is Dale Campbell, who was on his way home from work.
So I'm coming home to go home here in Mill Woods, and I got caught right in the tornado. There was houses flying across 23rd Avenue, trucks flying across. I got out of my truck to help people and got thrown 30 feet across into a field. And when I got up, there were people laying all over the place, so we'd picked up a couple of bodies, injured people with hardly any faces left, and put them in the back of my truck and took them out to the ambulances on the Sherwood Park Freeway.
And all over the southeast end of town, the story was the same.
All we saw is the wind touched down, and I rounded my family up and took them down the basement.
Did you hear anything down in the basement?
Oh, Christ. I heard everything down. We were scared silly. I mean, everything was coming off the house, and then we heard a big bang coming off this next door, I guess, when the roof came off. I don't know what we're going to do.
Where'd you go?
Down in the basement where cement was, underneath the stairs.
Did you hear anything?
Yeah.
What did it sound like? Is this your place?
Well, it was.
What happened?
Well, it was just a tornado, I guess, but the funnel came dead square right on the roof of the house, dropped right down on top, and lifted the whole roof right off, and then dropped down on the fence behind, and you can see the fence is all gone, and then it just headed straight towards that farmer's house and all those trees, and all we saw was the trees being all uprooted, and his house just disappeared.
6 miles south in Beaumont, barns were blown off their foundations, their occupants scattered throughout the fields.
Ever seen anything like this in your life?
No, I've never seen a twister before. I tell you, it's one hairy experience. I have to look at the sucker.
Those not caught in the path of the tornado captured it on film. These pictures were taken by amateur photographers, and these taken by a government employee out of a window of Edmonton's weather office. At least 100 people have been taken to hospital, but it's too early yet for accurate estimates of the dead and the injured. Kelly McClugan, CBC News, Edmonton.
Mayor Lawrence Decore has declared a state of emergency for the entire city. Nurses, doctors, and paramedics are being brought in from the outlying areas. Apparently, the Evergreen Mobile Trailer Park in northeast Edmonton was one of the hardest areas hit by that storm. We know that at least 70 people were injured, one person critically. As many as 100 of the trailer homes were either damaged or completely flipped over. The Red Cross is reported to be moving in right now to provide blankets and shelter, and also to set up a mobile hospital. Forecasters are predicting another storm system around 6:30, which is barely a few minutes from now. The Royal Alex Hospital says that it's treated as many as 40 people and had 2 air ambulance flights arrive because of this disaster. The Royal Alex wants all available staff to report for duty. University Hospital is asking staff as well to phone if they're available, but they are not asking nurses to go to the hospital, not just yet anyway. And all Edmonton firefighters have been asked to please report to their base stations. And right now we're going to go over to Lee McKenzie for an update on the weather system that's moving over our heads as we speak.
That's right, and I do have a little bit of good news for you, if there is any good news in this weathercast tonight, and that is that the system that's with us right now, moving over the city, should be gone around 7 o'clock. I just called the Alberta Weather Center, and they've told me that their information is that this is the last system. This should be gone through the city around 7 o'clock. Now, right now, the winds that are associated with it are funnel clouds and very high winds, but no tornadoes. The winds are 120 kilometers to 140 kilometers, so they are dangerous. But as far as an actual tornado, we should escape that possibility with this storm. Once this system comes through at 7 o'clock, it should be past the city and heading northeast. We can breathe easy then. We might have rain and clouds, but we won't have the dangerous weather through the night that we're having right now. But the storm systems that are passing through Edmonton, if you live north or east of Edmonton, then you had better be on the lookout, because they still are dangerous, they still are strong, and they're heading north and east from Edmonton. So anyone in that area, please be warned. But for us, We should be in the clear around 7 o'clock, Joanne.
We have a little bit of advice on what to do, you know, when these systems move through. It's so unpredictable, as you say, you just don't know. So the best thing, obviously, to do is to stay indoors, away from windows, stay away from doorways. If you're living in a house, again, the best place to be is in the basement, preferably near a sidewall that has a beam overhead. A lot of people live in apartments. If you're living in an apartment without a basement, well, the best place to be is inside, away from windows, away from balconies. Again, the Red Cross has information about homes or hotels for people who've suffered damage, whose residences have been damaged. The number's on your screen. It is 423-2680. We have new reports filtering in all the time. There's a lot of information coming in. We'll do our best to keep you up to date. We know for sure that 3 people have been killed because of this series of tornadoes that cut through the city. And again, the Royal Alex has put its emergency plans into place. As a result, the mayor has called a state of emergency for the entire city. We'd just like to recap that nurses and doctors and paramedics are being brought in from the outlying areas. And again, as Dana Lewis had mentioned earlier when he was down here with us, there's just so much going on. So many buildings have collapsed. Nobody can really be quite sure of where everybody is or precisely what's going on. So nurses, doctors, paramedics are being brought in from the outlying areas. And the Red Cross, of course, has set up shelters, and they are providing shelter at this moment. Now, the 911 emergency line in Edmonton has been plugged because of the emergency. So anyone needing help has been asked to call this number. And this number should be coming up on your screen in just a few minutes, I would hope. If it's not, here it is. It's 423-4554. So if you've been frantically trying to get in touch, you know, with emergency officials, maybe wondering what's going on, where your husband is, where your kids are, the 911 number has been plugged. And so the number that you are being asked to call is 423-4554. And there it is. It's on the screen now. It's 423-4554. And I guess that's just as much as we know right now. We're going to try and keep you up to date as more information becomes available. But Lee, you were just saying that it looks like the system that I saw outside just about, what, half an hour ago has pretty well passed over the city without a lot of damage as far as I know.
Well, we're feeling the last of it now, but it still has about another half hour left in it. It's not safe to go outside yet. But the tornado situation, which is the most dangerous and the most frightening of all, should not happen in this particular system. And again, if you live north or east of Edmonton, please take the warning that we have to give, because the systems have not played themselves out yet. The first one that came through a couple of hours ago and the one that's happening now are both in tandem heading in your direction. So please make sure that your home is secure and that you know where your family are, and do the best you can to batten down the hatches, because you could need it. And you know, Joanne, the sort of odd ingredient in all of this has been the humidity. Usually when the weather is hot on the prairies, it's also dry, which makes it comfortable. And we know the humidity that we've been having in the last few days. And that has been that one extra factor that's led to the dangerous weather that we're having right now. So again, by about 7 o'clock, we should have this system through the city. And we in Edmonton should be able to breathe easier. When it comes to be tomorrow, we should have rain and clouds, but we shouldn't have this dangerous weather repeated, because the cool air will bring the temperature down enough, and that dangerous combination of the heat, the jet stream, and the humidity that I explained a little earlier, 1 or 2 of those major ingredients will have gone, and we should be in the clear. We'll just have not very nice weather for the weekend, but I think that will be a relief compared to what we have right now.
A minor problem. Once again, the 911 emergency number in our city has been plugged because of what's been going on. So call the number on your screen. It's 423-4554 if you need assistance, or you're trying to, you know, find out exactly where you can go for help. 423-4554. We'll be back right after these messages.
Oh, look at it. Didn't hear you.
I need program sound in my ear. This is the storm. As you can see, it started, or it's probably pretty hard to see exactly from this shot, but it started in the southeast section of the city, the southeast section of Edmonton, and it grew. It moved through the green belt between Edmonton and Sherwood Park, and then it headed north. That was the first storm system that moved in earlier this afternoon, and obviously the most severe system. It's been followed by a secondary one, but as yet we've had not the same kinds of reports of damage that we received in the first tornado that hit the city earlier this afternoon. We do have an update on tonight's tornado. Paul Adams has been in the northeast section of the city, and he files this report.
In the Clairview area, in the extreme northeast of the city, dozens of homes were destroyed and wreckage was strewn through the streets.
My wife and my son were in the house. A good buddy of mine just rang the doorbell when it hit. The house came down and my buddy pulled them out.
God. Are they okay now?
Yeah.
Are they in the hospital?
No, I took them to the doctor. We took some glass out of them, and they're at my mom and dad's right now.
So they're okay?
Yeah.
Okay. How did you find out about it?
I was coming home like an ordinary after work, getting ready to go to the lake. We were all packed for camping. My trailer's small. I just pulled into my driveway and I couldn't believe it. I just started freaking out.
First, my dad phones and he says there's a tornado, and he said one of the tanks was my trailer tipped over. So he said, go downstairs, and he phoned again, and they make sure that we went downstairs. So we went downstairs, and the next minute we have this air conditioner. It fell through, and then the glass all shaked, and we went downstairs, and then we have this stuff my dad made upstairs. Downstairs, I mean, and it goes up, and all this sweep of air came in, and we got scared real fast.
Many of the residents of the area took refuge in their basements, and miraculously, most of them seemed to have escaped unscathed. Within an hour of the storm, people were searching through the rubble of their destroyed homes, looking for a few precious possessions that had survived the tornado. Paul Adams, CBC News, Clairview in the northeast of Edmonton.
Just to bring you up to date on what's going on, we know that 3 people have died in the southeast section of the city because of this tornado. These are the only confirmed deaths because of the storm. And again, earlier information is being revised. The city of Edmonton says that residents shouldn't turn off their own gas. Don't turn off your own gas, please, because Northwest utility crews have already done that in the areas affected. The Royal Alex Hospital wants all available staff to report for duty. The University Hospital is asking staff to phone if they're available, but they don't want their nurses to go in just yet. All Edmonton firefighters have been asked to please report to their base stations, and the 911 emergency number here in the city is plugged. If you need assistance, call 423-4554. We'll be back after these commercials.
There's almost so much information to tell you, it's hard to know where to start, except that I guess we can tell you that there are unconfirmed reports of as many as a dozen, perhaps more, dead from the series of storms that have hit Edmonton late this afternoon. 170 people injured. Apparently the worst devastation was at the Evergreen Trailer Park in northeast Edmonton, where our photographer that was out at the scene said he personally saw more than 2 bodies taken out. These pictures were taken by Bruce Makovichuk. He lives in Mill Woods. He heard this thunderous sound outside his door, grabbed his camera, went outside, and these are the pictures that he took. We can tell you while you're looking at these pictures from Mill Woods, and this would be around 5 o'clock this afternoon, that U of A nurses are being asked to report to the hospital. The firemen are asked to report to their base stations. The armed forces have been called in to help sift through the rubble. These are some of the hailstones that were reported that we've seen from the Mill Woods area, and apparently we've had reports that there are hailstones that are even larger than that in the northeast part of the city. As I say, the armed forces have been called in. If you can help, have a home that you can give, to lend, some blankets, any kind of food supplies. If you want to offer assistance, call 421-2213. That's 421-2213. And there are other numbers to call that we can give you in a moment if you are in need of assistance or a place to stay. And Bob, apparently we have some new pictures that have just come in from the second storm. This is from the first storm that hit around 5 o'clock, and then there was another one that hit around 6 o'clock this afternoon.
Now, the storm that we're talking about now hit Devon We were told that there were funnel clouds forming and that a tornado had hit Devon. That's eyewitness reports. Apparently, though, in this visual that we see, no funnel clouds developed, but severe hail did hit the Devon area. Now, Eric Neville is sitting beside me and perhaps can interpret these pictures as we go along. That needs no interpretation. That is crop-damaging hail. I'm sure the farmers in that area with their canola fields and their grain fields are going to be investigating their conditions tomorrow morning, first thing. Bad news for people in the Devon area. Not as bad as many parts of Edmonton, however, according to the latest reports. Northeast Edmonton, South Edmonton in the Mill Woods area, East Edmonton in the Refinery Row area, all very hard hit by several funnel clouds that developed this afternoon at around 4:30, and then again redeveloped after 6 o'clock tonight, apparently, as John Barry was saying from his live report on someone's backyard deck from Mill Woods about 20 minutes ago.
Well, so far this entire newscast, we've had no good news. So perhaps this is the time to give you some.
If you've got it, give it to us.
Just talked to the weather office, and on their radar from to the west now and to the southwest of the city looks absolutely clean. There's nothing out there. So at this point anyway, it looks like we'll probably have some sunshine before today is over.
What does that mean to the people east of us then?
That means that they're going to have to suffer like we've suffered, because the main line of the storm cloud now runs from Camrose up through Fort Saskatchewan, and then it sort of bends over towards Westlock and Barrhead, where the top of the storm is sort of spread out into a steady rain. As far as the stuff to the directly east of the city and to the south and towards Fort Saskatchewan, there's still a potential out there for damaging winds and hail and what have you. But the Westlock Barrhead area seems to be settling down, and in fact, from the looks of the thing on the radar, the entire storm is starting to lose its punch. It's starting to settle down a little bit. That is still a long ways to go, because the winds have been clocked from 110 to 120 kilometers. And this is typical. When you have the big thunderstorm, the winds are drawn up into the thunderstorm, and what goes up bends and comes back down again. So basically it's winds aloft that are coming down and hitting the surface. Normal surface winds are never that strong. But in the vicinity of the thunderstorms, you can have damaging winds up to 110 to 120 kilometers.
This is usually a situation that we observe from afar. It happens in Texas. It happens in Arkansas.
It happens in Tornado
It doesn't
Alley.
happen in Edmonton.
Simply because we don't have the source region for the moisture. But for the sake of repeating or sounding boring again, the source region for the moisture has been being pumped up into Canada now for over a week.
And when we see those troubles in the States, often trailer courts are the worst hit.
They really are, and what's happened here is the same kind of scenario. The Evergreen Trailer Park in the northeast part of the city was the most severely hit, and as I told you a minute ago, the photographer had seen bodies being taken out of the trailer park. He is on his way back right now, and we'll have that tape for you in just a moment.
We're going to take a commercial break.
As we mentioned before, there are several numbers that you can be calling if you're in need of assistance or if you can offer assistance. If we could take a look at some of those numbers right now. The emergency lines to call if you need help are 423-4554. The emergency shelter number from the Red Cross, if you need a place to stay for this evening, is 423-2680. And if you can offer help, if you have anything that you can offer in any way or help these people out in any way that have been displaced by this weather, call 421-2213. Bob?
The emergency relief people have told us to ask you not to phone 911 to find out where your loved ones might be if they're late getting home from work or whatever. Do not phone 911 unless it is a real emergency. It's a good chance that your loved ones are safe. They're just probably stuck in their cars somewhere in perhaps knee or waist deep water. There is a lot of that around the city. Are we going to get more floods tonight?
I think the worst of it is over at this point anyway. In the western regions, you can already see the clouds are starting to break up. Up in the Peace Country, they're going to have periods of rain for tonight and tomorrow. In fact, that whole area up towards Slave Lake tonight is developing a steady rain, but that's from this system.
Well, the armed forces have been called in to help clean up this mess left by the twisters. Mayor Lawrence Decor of Edmonton declared a state of emergency at 6:12 this evening as a result of the damage caused by the tornado which hit the southeast part of the city earlier this afternoon. State of emergency allows the emergency crews more latitude in dealing with collapsed buildings and such, and for searching for potentially injured people.
I think as well, too, a state of emergency will give the city more powers to ask the provincial and federal governments for aid in paying for all the cleanup that we're going to have to need. We have Rick Bremnes here with us. He is the photographer that went out to the Evergreen Trailer Park, and we've been hearing, Rick, that that's where the worst damage it has been. As we roll the pictures and we see what you shot there this evening, can you tell us what you saw?
Well, it's incredible, Daphne. It looks like something out of Kansas. People are still looking through their houses. They know they have loved ones inside. They're pulling stuff apart. Damage like that before nobody's ever seen. They've got a temporary hospital set up in the food store, as well as another morgue. Firemen are calling for people, still searching. Approximately 200 trailers have been wiped out and lifted off the ground.
Rick, we heard that there are 6 confirmed dead. Did you see any bodies?
Yeah, they're still finding people at this moment. Traffic's tied up. A lot of street lights are still out and traffic lights are still out.
Did you talk to anyone who was there when it hit?
Yeah, I talked to one eyewitness who was in a trailer at the time, and he said he just got down under the kitchen table and just rolled into a ball. And he said it was amazing to see people crawl out of this thing alive.
There were trailers that were not damaged?
Yeah, it took out a section of the trailer park. There's approximately 600 trailers in this park, and it came right through the middle of it.
It looks like there were leaks of water, obviously. What about gas leaks? Any danger?
They had the gas people were out and shutting off lines at the time.
But no fires?
No.
What's the emotional state of the people in the trailer park?
General shock. People are actually pulling together quite well and try and help each other out. A lot of people just showing up on the scene and they don't know what they're going to find when they get there, and they're just kind of you know, looking around, pretty lost actually.
Were you there when the air ambulance arrived?
Yes, they're making several trips back and forth.
I was just going to say that as it happened around 5 o'clock, I would imagine not everybody would have been home from work at the time. Were there a lot of people in the trailers? Had you heard from anybody? Were there a lot of people that they were afraid were trapped inside? Or?
Yes, there's one man who's actually pulling his trailer apart looking. He supposedly has 4 children inside.
Oh my God. And he hadn't found them?
No, they're still searching. They're bringing in heavy equipment to pull parts of the trailer out because they're like stacked on top of each other.
We don't see people from the trailer court around. Did the authorities clear them out right away?
A lot of them are. There's a bunch of people looking around, but there's not much they can do.
Who's this fellow?
He is just a neighbor, I guess, helping someone. They're looking for people in there, and any bigger pile of rubble is where they're searching for bodies.
What were the main injuries that you saw?
Well,
were they broken bones?
Yeah, they were in the store. They were actually operating on people's legs, trying to close up their legs, and people with cut noses and eyes and from flying glass.
When we were listening to the emergency services radio earlier this afternoon, the police, the firemen, the ambulance workers were having a heck of a time getting to the sites where the tornado touched down because of the water on the roads, and they felt almost helpless at times, unable to get to the trailer court such as this.
Yeah, most of it was seen that the traffic is so backed up, just from general it being rush hour, and a lot of people trying to get home to see what the damage is, that the ambulances are coming along the sides and trying to drive down the other side of the road.
Were you there when the second storm began to develop about a half an hour ago?
Yeah, I was just leaving, and it's quite a wind, and since it didn't seem to build as much as it did the first time, boy, oh boy.
You drive in a rather light van. Did you feel it moving?
Well, actually, I was still trying to get back to my van. I had to leave it a mile up the road.
Look at the shock on this man's face.
He had just actually found out from somebody else that his 2 friends were safe, and so he was relieved there.
A look of relief. Just to remind people, these are pictures. This is raw tape of the Evergreen Trailer Park in the northeast part of the city. There you can see it. What did you say, Rick, about 100 trailers damaged?
The park managers gave an estimate of 200.
200?
Yeah.
That just doesn't happen in Edmonton. That's unbelievable.
Those are twisted beams there of metal that just have been turned.
I just had this note handed to me. All members of the Community Police Radio Network are to report to the Strathcona Police Department for further instructions to deal with this current emergency. That's all members of the Community Police Radio Network are to report to the Strathcona Police Department.
The air ambulances, as I understand, fly into the University of Alberta Hospital, and that is, I suppose, why all of the nurses that work at the U of A hospital have been asked to report to their superiors, and if they can't get a hold of them by phone, just to get in the car if it looks safe and get to work.
I can't believe what I'm seeing. This is just amazing.
The aid services of Edmonton has opened up to phone lines for the public to refer them on to the proper emergency numbers. So if you're in doubt, we have, I hope you're not going to be confused by these 2 more numbers. It's the aid services of Edmonton, and they're a clearinghouse. They'll put you to the right people. 426-4252. I'll just give you one of them. 426-4252. And they will help you get to the right emergency people if you're needing shelter tonight. By the way,
Ricky, just a second. Ricky, we're pointing to the pictures right there. What was it we were seeing?
That's the fellow right there. They've, if you listen to the audio here, it might help us.
There's nothing in there that I can find. There's no answers.
This is the fellow who's looking for his children.
There was one fella over the trailer in the back there 6 years ago. He had 2 girls at home. The trailer somewhere here. There's a possibility there's something around that. This is one frame there, and there's another frame out there.
he must be in a state of shock. Incredible. An emergency situation has been declared by this Mayor of Edmonton, Maurice DeCour.
You know what always strikes me is every time we see pictures of a tornado and a report that comes out of Oklahoma or Kansas or wherever at a tornado alley, 9 times out of 10 they interview somebody and they say, no, I wasn't insured. I just pray that all these people had insurance and that they can find all the loved ones that they have in there.
That footage that we saw earlier, thank you very much,
Thank you,
Rick
Rick.
Remness. Brave of you to be out on a night like this, and very riveting pictures from the Evergreen Trailer Court in northeast Edmonton. We mentioned earlier that Bruce, who brought in the citizen footage earlier, taken on a VHS machine, a
From
home
Mill
video
Woods, yeah.
from Mill Woods, showed us some of the hailstones. He said his home was not damaged. I was in Calgary 5 years ago when a hailstorm hit with much smaller stones, and you don't notice the damage at the beginning, but you check your roof the next day, and well, the insurance companies may be very busy for a long time
Or even
to
your
come.
cars. Just update, there are 6 confirmed dead, 170 injured, and we're going to take a break right now before we come back.
Damage is heavy. Launching a search, the government says more would-be refugees are coming. And on the Journal, out of the blue, a deadly tornado devastates a suburb of Edmonton. The city rallies to help the victims. The National with Knowlton Nash.
Good evening. There's been a terrible disaster in Edmonton. Tornadoes ripped through the city this afternoon, killing at least 28 people. 100 others have been rushed to hospital to be treated for injuries. And there are fears that even more people may be trapped inside collapsed buildings. The tornadoes touched down in several areas, leaving a trail of destruction behind them. Kelly McLugan reports.
The storm hit Edmonton just after 3 o'clock this afternoon. Within minutes, the reports are pouring in. Tornadoes. The first touches down in Mill Woods on Edmonton's south side. It stretches for blocks, sweeping northward along 50th Street. The tornado touches down again, flattening an industrial park.
Well, we saw the tornado coming in from the south, saw the power line shaking. We were watching from the shop, and from the doors of the shop, we heard a sound. It was just like a freight train. And I had everybody move right to the center of the building. There's a concrete block portion in the center of it, and we moved everybody into that area and into the center portion of the office and went right through, and I was sitting there, and then all of a sudden I could see daylight, and the whole roof, just everything disappeared.
Next, the tornado hit the Sherwood Park Freeway, where rush hour had come early, thanks to the upcoming long weekend.
Well, I just went through it. I drove through the tornado, that's all, and it didn't flip my car. I made it through, and then I seen people all over the place dead, and bodies and houses torn this.
And right now, we're concerned with the people that are in immediate danger, and we have the area blocked off for now, moving as many spectators back as we can. We have found pockets of people that were trapped and have rescued them. They're out now, but we're right now, again, looking for people that...
And the rescue officials aren't alone. On the southeast edge of the city, where the tornado first hit, residents stand surrounded by devastation. One of those is Dale Campbell, who was on his way home from work.
So I'm coming home to go home here in Mill Woods, and I got caught right in the tornado. There was houses flying across 23rd Avenue, trucks flying across. I got out of my truck to help people and got thrown 30 feet across into a field. And when I got up, there were people laying all over the place, so we'd picked up a couple of bodies, injured people with hardly any faces left, and put them in the back of my truck and took them out to the ambulances on the Sherwood Park Freeway.
And all over the southeast end of town, the story was the same.
All we saw is the wind touched down, and I rounded my family up and took them down the basement.
Did you hear anything down in the basement?
Oh, Christ. I heard everything down. We were scared silly. I mean, everything was coming off the house, and then we heard a big bang coming off this next door, I guess, when the roof came off. I don't know what we're going to do.
Where'd you go?
Down in the basement where cement was, underneath the stairs.
Did you hear anything?
Yeah.
What did it sound like? Is this your place?
Well, it was.
What happened?
Well, it was just a tornado, I guess, but the funnel came dead square right on the roof of the house, dropped right down on top, and lifted the whole roof right off, and then dropped down on the fence behind, and you can see the fence is all gone, and then it just headed straight towards that farmer's house and all those trees, and all we saw was the trees being all uprooted, and his house just disappeared.
6 miles south in Beaumont, barns were blown off their foundations, their occupants scattered throughout the fields.
Ever seen anything like this in your life?
No, I've never seen a twister before. I tell you, it's one hairy experience. I have to look at the sucker.
There are still people that are trapped in automobiles or houses or warehouses. There are still people that are being transported to the hospital, so we don't know the final tragedies that our city is experiencing.
Those not caught in the path of the tornado captured it on film. These pictures were taken by amateur photographers, and these taken by a government employee out of a window of Edmonton's weather office. At least 100 people have been taken to hospital, but it's too early yet for accurate estimates of the dead and the injured. Kelly McClugan, CBC News, Edmonton.
At least 13 of those who were killed died in a trailer park. Hundreds of trailers were on the lot when the area was totally flattened by a twister. We have a report from Kevin Tibbles.
There were close to 800 trailers here in the Evergreen Trailer Park before the storm hit. Now the park has been devastated.
Yeah, I found my daughter. She's there. Oh, my daughter's at the hospital. My wife, no. She was with my daughter. And my daughter crawled out from somewhere she doesn't remember from where.
The mad scramble is now on by rescue workers trying to locate the dead and injured. At least 13 people are dead here. Many were taken to a makeshift morgue in a nearby store. Many more injured have been taken to hospital in downtown Edmonton.
At least 70 to 100 people have been transported to hospital by either air ambulance, and obviously the more critically injured people have gone by air ambulance. Otherwise, the other ones have gone by ambulance to hospital.
And hundreds of fire, ambulance, army, and other volunteers are frantically digging through the rubble here. The residents who survived this horrible storm are now wandering through the wreckage of what used to be their homes. This is Kevin Tibbles for CBC News at the Evergreen Trailer Park.
Edmonton officials have declared a state of emergency. They're asking everyone to stay at work or at home until it's lifted. The 911 number is overloaded, and people are being asked to listen to radio and television for instructions. Officials also are telling people not to turn off gas by themselves. Edmonton's hospitals have been put on full alert. More than 100 people have already been taken to hospitals by a fleet of helicopters and ambulances, and they're getting ready for more injured. There's a call for off-duty nurses, doctors, and paramedics to contact hospitals for instructions. The storm has also left many Edmonton streets clogged. Heavy rain and hail flooded parts of the city. Police have blocked off several underpasses as water rushed through from clogged city sewers. Another boatload of would-be refugees may be on its way to Canada. Ottawa says a small fishing vessel left Amsterdam 8 days ago, carrying an unspecified number of people. Tonight, a full-scale air and sea
through the rubble in a frantic search for more victims. At this stage, it's not even known who, if anyone, is unaccounted for. Authorities do say if they find anyone else, it's doubtful they would have survived.
Our trailer's here, but we were one of the fortunate ones, but as you can see, there are a lot of people who aren't fortunate.
And she has 2 girls, and she was, her trailer was second from the road, and there's nothing there.
Rescue crews will continue to work their way through the wreckage overnight. It may take days before all residents are located. Stephen Tadman, ITV News.
This is Linda Steele. It was a scene of total devastation in southeast Edmonton. The tornado ripped through Refinery Road, destroying literally everything in its path. At the Byers truck yard, hundreds of cars and semi-trucks were twisted and flattened by the storm. At least 1 person is dead. Many more have been injured. Yard officials think everyone has been accounted for, but the search goes on. Rescue crews have been sifting through the rubble, hoping to find more survivors. Every car and truck is being probed for signs of life.
What we understand, we've got everybody out of this area, and everybody's out of here from what we understand. We've got a reading on it. We're just one guy, and we're waiting for a phone call.
It was much the same story at this southeast industrial yard. Survivors looked on helplessly as emergency crews worked to free those trapped inside the wreckage. Dozens of buildings were leveled. Officials have no idea how many have died. On the eastern outskirts of Edmonton, the twister blew a freight train off its track. At least 3 people have been reported killed, more are injured. A hazardous goods team has been rushed to the scene to right a derailed ammonia car. Lumber was scattered like matchsticks when the tornado hit this lumber yard. Police, rescue workers, and dozens of volunteers are on the scene, combing the area for survivors and bodies.
We're also searching the rubble for other people who we believe may still be buried in the buildings. At this time, we don't know just how many people are in there. The search will be going on for the rest of the evening and probably overnight, too.
Officials say the rescue effort will continue throughout the night. Linda Steele, ITV News.
This is Chris Durham. It was chaos at hospitals throughout Edmonton. Dozens of people were injured in this storm, many of them seriously. Many of the victims were still in shock as they relived the horror.
If you were to describe the scene, what did it look like?
Those pictures of Mexico after the earthquake, that's what it looks like. Just a mess. People are dead and stuff in there, I've heard.
I was just sitting down reading some mail, and I felt the wind going through my house. That so fast that my ears were popping. And then I got up to look outside, and I could see all the buildings on our property, which is about 7, 8, all being torn down. And I watched a van roll on the road in front of us, and I just went through the window with the rest of the house when it collapsed, and I just kept rolling, and I got hit with half the house.
Yeah, it just came up on us and was gone, and so was the building. Just leveled the whole block.
Every hospital in the Edmonton area put into effect their emergency disaster plans. Off-duty nurses and doctors have been called in to help with the injured.
We had a tremendous turnout of staff from those who were at home and also from staff who were within the hospital. Many staff decided not to go home at the end of their shift, and so we've had a tremendous numbers of people available.
Chris Durham, ITV News.
Neil Fitzpatrick has been here, of course, all evening, manning the phones and dispatching cameras and crews, and also manning the weather desk. Neil, disaster of huge proportions, but what meteorologically exactly happened?
Well, Doug, basically what caused the whole problem was the cold front that developed today. We had this hot, moist air. The cold front acted like a wedge to push that hot, moist air up into the sky. That's what you need to start a tornado. All the ingredients were correct, but the weather people are quick to say that it wasn't the tornado as such. It was the thunderstorm and everything accompanying it that formed the tornado that caused all the damage. Right now, this storm has moved off to the north. It has diminished in size. It's no longer a tornado, but they are issuing a heavy rainfall warning for the Grand Prairie, Fort St. John regions of Alberta. They can expect 50 to 70 millimeters of rain over the next 18 to 24 hours. So that's where the storm stands now, fortunately reduced in magnitude.
Let's take another look at the home video that was shot by Bill Kerr that we began our program with tonight, and we get another idea of the awesome power of this kind of weather phenomena. And well, it's terrifying to see something like that coming down the road.
It's something we've never seen in Alberta before, Doug, and as I said, all the ingredients were basically perfect today for tornado situations. This type of weather is common down in Tornado Alley down in the States, in Oklahoma, Texas and that, but up here it's just that, as I said, that combination of the hot, moist air combined with a cold front that swept underneath it, and it just picked up steam from the foothills and roared in a north-northeast direction right through the Edmonton area.
And we have another section of home video. People were phoning all day offering the pictures that they had taken. We have another piece of video that shows this from a different angle, how it developed. And here we get a different aspect of the storm.
We had people telling me from Leduc, for instance, that they could see the funnel cloud going by Leduc on its way to Beaumont when it first happened this afternoon, missing them by just a kilometer or less perhaps, and then as well the second storm that went through, a less powerful one, but still lots of rain and wind, passed by them on the other direction, out by Devon, and swept through to the Nemeo area, giving them heavy rainfalls, but again, nothing like this.
And you'll have more explanation on this on the weather map later on. Thank you very much, Neil. Well, hit with a disaster of this magnitude, the city's emergency teams responded immediately. A command center was set up at City Hall where everybody was dispatched from. Every off-duty policeman, fireman, ambulance worker, doctor, and nurse was called in to cope with the tragedy. Susan Smitten has that story.
It's the first time this command center was activated, but it swung into action within an hour of the first storm. The rain outside beat at the windows as the heads of all Edmonton emergency services worked to coordinate rescue efforts. Down the hall, city workers manned 8 emergency phone lines. People phoned in looking for lost relatives, requiring help, or offering their services.
The command post went up quickly, and the chiefs and the heads of all of the departments are here, and there is a person in control so that priorities are being measured and responses are going out to those priorities.
The tension lessened considerably after the second wave of the storm passed. No more tornadoes or hail, and by 6:30 it was all over, but rescue and cleanup operations are still in full swing.
We called in all our employees, all those who were available were called upon. All our vehicles were utilized. We also called upon Edmonton Transport for some buses. We have used private vehicles, and we've had a large number of volunteers, people like paramedics from outside the city who phoned in and volunteered and come through the area. At the moment, when I've just left the authority, we had 70 who were injured and had been transported to hospital by various means. That was including the helicopter and the multi-purpose unit, which we have, and also other vehicles. And we have at the moment 28 dead.
The fire department responded in full, and we had in excess of 400 people in about an hour and a half after this started, which is very commendable for our people, I believe. We had 3 major areas that were a problem. The Millwoods, where with collapsed houses, our search and rescue teams were working out there, and they are still out there. The Evergreen Trailer Park, which was the major area of fatalities, was fully covered by our manpower, and they are still out there also.
We're still assessing the damage to our facilities. We've had 4 pressure control stations either damaged or completely destroyed. And of course the damage to the buildings has resulted in some damage to the interior piping of those buildings, and we've found it necessary to shut off the gas to an area south of 76th Avenue to 60th Avenue and from 17th Street to 34th Street.
The trailer park will be completely evacuated, and again we will do the trailers one by one. We believe the majority of the dead and injured are removed from there. However, we're not sure.
I think things are under control. It's with great regret that I worry and am concerned about the people who have perished in this dreadful tragedy, and mourn for with the families, the loved ones that they've lost.
Emergency crews will be out for the remainder of the night. Police will be guarding severely hit areas against looting. And tomorrow morning, these people will meet again to work on cleaning up the disaster. Susan Smitten, ITV News.
And with a disaster of this scope, there are thousands of people trying to find out the extent of damage, if friends and family are all right. And as a result, AGT's lines coming into the city are overloaded. Many lines ring busy. If you want to call someone and get a busy signal, please wait 10 to 15 minutes at least before trying again. in order to give the lines a chance to clear. Franca Catoni has details now on the relief operation being established and where you can call for help.
Hospitals throughout the city have been swamped. Off-duty nurses were being asked to report to work to handle the dozens of injuries. A special number has been set up to be used only in life-threatening situations. It's 423-4554. Once again, that number is to be used only in life-threatening situations. People who want to inquire about friends or relatives who may have been hurt or killed by the storm can call 421-2213. That's the Victim Services Unit at the police department. Police are asking people to refrain from calling unless absolutely necessary. The City of Edmonton has set up a disaster services center at City Hall. The number there is 428-5736. For food and shelter information, you can call 471-5110 or 429-6982. The Red Cross House is offering shelter for anyone left homeless by the storm. It's located at 9931 106th Street. Numerous people are also offering their homes to those in need, and the addresses can be attained by calling 423-2680. Emergency Relief Services is also providing food and shelter. The shelter is located at 10820 119th Street, or you can call 453-1396. They are also accepting donations of food, clothing, and beds. Some hotels are also providing accommodation. The Ramada Renaissance downtown and the Renford Inn on White Avenue are just a few. The distress line has also been set up. If you call 426-4252, they can link you up with a police or fire department, the Red Cross and the city emergency numbers, and the addresses of shelters. Once again, that number is 426-4252. Franca Catoni, ITV News.
Just one updated note on all those telephone numbers. The Victim Services number, 421-2213, has been disconnected or canceled now. That's the number to call if you need information on a missing relative or friend. The Red Cross is now looking after that aspect of it, as well as all their other responsibilities. That Red Cross number, once again, is 423-2680. 423-2680. Coming up in just a few moments, more on the tornado disaster and the rest of the day's news.
The city, leaving a path of death and destruction. And on Friday Night Arts with Ann Petrie, dashing, debonair, and deadly, the new Bond. Movies for children from Rock Demers. And Bill Bragg, a Cockney conscience for rock and roll. The Journal with Bill Cameron.
As you heard, on the national, a state of emergency has been declared in Edmonton. Late this afternoon, a tornado ripped through the south part of the city. There are some people dead and more injured, and the total of both goes up as the night goes on. If you want to find out if relatives and friends are safe, the number to call is area code 403-421-2213. We'll repeat this number at the end of this program. But first, to Edmonton. Dana Lewis is anchor for CBC Television in Edmonton, and Lee McKenzie anchors the weather reports. Lee, you were on top of the building, I'm told, and you actually saw this thing form. What was that like?
That's right, Bill. I was at the Alberta Weather Centre. That's our division of Environment Canada. And I was over there getting our daily weather information when, as soon as I walked in the building, they told me that this tornado warning was out. We went up onto the roof of the building where the rain was pelting and looked about 10 miles to the horizon. What I could see at that point were, along with the ferocious-looking thunderstorms, thunder clouds that were coming our way, was a very big and loose, swirling-looking cloud. It was not yet that traditional funnel shape that you would assume was a tornado, but instead it was a bit of wisping cloud kind of swirling around in a very large barrel shape. But very quickly, within minutes, as I watched, it became very dark and came into that funnel shape that we know is a tornado shape, and began to do, it came as a bulge, and then it would narrow out and bounce down, touch the ground, come up, bounce down, touch the ground, and come up. And it was heading right for us. I stood and watched it for about the 20 minutes to half an hour that it took to come right up to the weather center.
All right, let's cut to you for a moment, Dana. Where are you at this point?
At this point, we have had word that the tornado is coming in from the south side of Edmonton. It has already touched down in a housing development on the south side. I'm now in a van with my cameraman attempting to drive out to that area when really we come very close to the tornado itself. At that point, the van is rocking. A large hail is coming down the size of baseballs. We were scared that the front windshield of the vehicle was going to shatter, and you could only see several feet in front of you. At that point, we were in touch with the newsroom, and we learned that the tornado had touched down in the main area on the south side of Edmonton along the Sherwood Park Freeway. Now, that's a freeway that runs east to west. The tornado had come up through an industrial area across the freeway. There were many motorists that were on the freeway at the time. Cars were picked up like model toys that kids would have and thrown hundreds of yards. The building itself, very much like the Barrie tornado of several years ago, are just leveled. There was a lot of rubble there, and at this point, the big difficulty is trying to get into those buildings and find out how many more people could be trapped.
Lee, were you able to give the city any warning of this at all?
The problem, Bill, is that it came up so quickly. The Weather Center tracks these sort of systems with a radar system that they have. And all along, they were watching the thunderstorm approaching, and we all knew that, well, we'd been having a series of thunderstorms over the last few days. But suddenly and very immediately, just as quickly as I watched, and as that cloud I was describing to you suddenly became a full-fledged tornado, it hit the city, and they had a tornado warning just before it hit the city. They didn't really know. It's one of those situations where the factors are all there, but unless all the factors involved meet precisely at the right time, you're crying wolf.
And they don't meet precisely that often in Edmonton, do they?
No, that's right. You see, the ingredients that you need are severe thunderstorms, which, of course, anywhere in Canada you can have, and a very cold and fast jet stream. But the other ingredient you need is for the hot air to be very humid. And usually, as you know, in sunny Alberta, where this isn't the norm, our hot weather is usually dry. But we've had a system pushing moisture into us from the Pacific, so our normally hot summer day also became very humid. That was the extra trigger ingredient that was needed, and unfortunately it proved to come together with everything else just at the right time, or rather the wrong time, today.
All right. Dana, I know that the thing touched down in more than one place in Edmonton. Can you draw me a kind of a mental sketch of the city and tell me where this thing hit?
Things are chaotic, to say the least, right now, as we're attempting to get some aerial photographs ourselves. But basically, it came in from the south, moving to the north. The first area it hit on the south side of the city was a place called Millwoods, which is an intense residential area, and leveled some homes there. People were injured. People are still going through the debris there. It then continued to go north, still on the south side of the city, and that's where it passed through that industrial area and across the freeway, playing havoc with rush hour traffic. And then from there, it seemed to swing, I believe, to the northwest a little bit, and it hit a trailer park on the northwest side of the city. We have conflicting reports. We have as many as 50 or 150 people are injured. At least 70 people were injured in that trailer park alone. It played havoc in there.
I guess the injuries would involve a lot of flying glass, a lot of contusions, a lot of broken bones.
Exactly.
Lee,
all we know.
What goes on inside a tornado? Do you have any idea of what kind of speed the winds develop?
You know what happens, Bill, in these kind of situations is that every weather measurement device at the Weather Center goes berserk. The barometric pressure goes crazy, the wind speed and direction goes crazy, temperature can fluctuate wildly, and when that cloud, though, when it's spinning, all I can really tell you is that with the intense winds in it, it kind of builds up its speed, because try to imagine this. It's like a child's top with a string that you pull. Once that gets going, the upper winds keep whipping past it, and they spin it and spin it and spin it. It keeps going, and as those winds increase and as they affect the tornado, it changes and bounces down and up like this. And it just picks the stuff up in a suction action and flings it around in a very wide action.
All right, Dana, I want to make sure I get this in. There will be a lot of people in the other parts of the country now wondering about relatives they probably won't be able to reach in Edmonton because the phone lines are down. What should people who don't live in Edmonton do to find out whether everybody's okay?
Well, I'll hand you back to Dana in a second for that, but I do want to add one more thing about this particular system. They tell me at the Weather Center that although it has passed Edmonton now, it's heading to the northeast, it's heading northeast and east. which means that now that it's off our backs, it's headed to the northeastern part of Alberta, and it hasn't lost a lot of its oomph. It's still packing a punch, and it's heading for Saskatchewan and Manitoba. So people in those two provinces should listen to their weather stations and see if they're in for any warnings.
All right, thanks. Dana?
There is a victim services line set up, Bill. Of course, it's area code 403 in Alberta, and the number is 421-2213. That's 421-2213 for anyone that's concerned about friends or relatives that could be in these areas.
All right, we've got about 30 seconds left. I don't have to tell broadcasters how long that is, but Lee, you say that the warning now is over for Edmonton?
For Edmonton City, but not for the northern and eastern parts of Alberta. You know, Bill, you should come back to us someday so we can tell you how beautiful the weather is here in Alberta.
What a way to end an interview. All right, thank you both very much. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
In a moment, Friday Night Arts with Ann Petrie.